The conference room buzzed with conversations. As I glanced at my phone, it lit up with an incoming call from Tyler. I stepped into the hallway, expecting the usual small talk. How's the trip? When will you be home? But Tyler's voice was cold and smug. I'm divorcing you, he said, almost triumphantly. I've already sold the apartment, so you'll need to figure out where you're going to live. Enjoy that. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. His audacity and lack of remorse were shocking, almost laughable. My grip on the phone tightened as his words sank in. You sold the apartment? I asked, keeping my voice calm. Yeah, he replied with a dry laugh. Nicole and I need the money to start our life together. She deserves better than that tiny place anyway. Nicole, the name stung. I had suspected for months that someone else was in the picture. Tyler's late nights, sudden work trips, and growing distance between us all pointed to it. But hearing her name spoken so casually, as if I were the outsider, lit a fire inside me. Sounds good, I said evenly, refusing to let him hear me crack. My name is Amelia, and up until that moment, I thought I'd married someone I could trust. Tyler and I had been together for 6 years. While things weren't always perfect, I believed in our partnership. We had worked hard to buy our apartment, a cozy 2-bedroom in the city that I loved. It wasn't just a home, it symbolized everything we had built together, or so I thought. Looking back, there had been signs, small cracks I'd ignored. Tyler's dismissive attitude when I asked about finances, or the way he'd brush off my concerns with a charming smile and a quick kiss. I thought his confidence came from being capable. Now I realized it came from knowing he could manipulate me. The rest of the day passed in a blur. I sat through meetings, nodding in all the right places while my mind raced. Tyler thought he'd won, that he could pull the rug out from under me, sell the home I worked so hard for, and walk away scot-free. But there was one crucial detail he didn't know. The apartment was in my name. Months ago, I had transferred the deed into my name when we refinanced. Tyler had agreed without a second thought because it meant a lower interest rate. He hadn't bothered to read the paperwork. His carelessness would be his downfall. By the time I returned to my hotel room that evening, my shock had turned into resolve. I wasn't going to cry or beg. If Tyler wanted a fight, he'd get one, and I intended to win. The first call I made was to Chloe, my lawyer and longtime friend. I laid out the situation in detail, my voice steady even as my pulse raced. He sold the apartment? Chloe asked, shocked. Does he even realize he can't do that without your consent? Apparently not, I said, a hint of amusement in my tone. He thinks he's already spent the money on his new life with Nicole. Chloe laughed dryly. Well, he's in for a rude awakening. The sale is invalid. You can prove sole ownership. And if he's taken money from a buyer, he's on the hook for fraud. The word fraud sent a jolt of satisfaction through me. What do we need to do? I asked. First, we'll notify the buyer that the sale isn't legal, Chloe said. Then, we'll draft a formal letter for Tyler, outlining the consequences of his actions. If he tries anything else, we'll take him to court. When I hung up, a strange calm settled over me. Tyler thought he'd outsmarted me, leaving me powerless and scrambling. In reality, he'd set himself up for the ultimate humiliation. I spent the rest of the trip focusing on work, compartmentalizing my emotions, and channeling my energy into what lay ahead. The betrayal hurt, but the thought of reclaiming my life and watching Tyler's smug confidence crumble gave me a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in months. When I boarded the plane home, I was ready to face Tyler, dismantle his lies, and start a new chapter without him. This wasn't just about winning, it was about taking back control. The flight home gave me hours to reflect on how everything had unraveled. Tyler's arrogance was astounding. He hadn't even bothered to hide his betrayal, treating me like just another obstacle in his path to freedom. Instead of letting anger consume me, I focused on my plan. Tyler thought I was powerless, but he didn't realize I'd been playing the long game without even knowing it. As the plane touched down, I called Chloe. I'm back, I said, hauling my suitcase off the carousel. What's the next step? We've already notified the buyer, she replied briskly. They were shocked, and not too happy with Tyler. They're willing to cooperate, which helps our case. And Tyler? I asked. I sent him the formal letter this morning, Chloe said. It explains the illegality of the sale, your sole ownership of the apartment, and the potential consequences of fraud. He hasn't responded yet, but I'm guessing he's furious. Good, I thought. Let him stew. When I got home, the apartment was eerily quiet. Tyler's things were still there, jackets draped over a chair, shoes carelessly tossed by the door, but the place felt different. Like the energy had shifted. I took a deep breath. knowing the confrontation was coming. Sure enough, Tyler stormed in that evening, his face red with anger and his phone clutched in his hand. "What the hell is this?" he shouted, waving Chloe's letter. "You're telling me I can't sell the apartment? It's half mine." "No, Tyler," I said calmly, crossing my arms. "It's not. The deed has been in my name for months. You can't sell something you don't own." He froze, his face shifting between confusion and rage. "What are you talking about?" he snapped. I reached for the deed, which I'd pulled from my files earlier, and held it up. "After we refinanced, I had the deed transferred to my name. You signed off on it, or did you just skim the paperwork, like always?" For a moment, he said nothing, then his expression twisted into a sneer. "You think you're so smart, don't you? This doesn't change anything. I already made a deal, and you're going to look like a fool when it all falls apart." I stared at him, unblinking. "The sale is already void, Tyler, the buyer knows it, and they're ready to take legal action if you don't return the money." I took a step closer, lowering my voice. "And if you've spent even a single cent of that deposit, you're in even bigger trouble." For the first time, Tyler's confidence wavered. "You don't know what you're talking about," he muttered, avoiding my eyes. "Oh, I know exactly what I'm talking about," I replied, keeping my voice steady. "You've spent years treating me like I'm too naive to notice what you're doing, but guess what, Tyler? I've been paying attention, and now you're going to face the consequences." He started pacing, his frustration mounting. "This is ridiculous. You're blowing everything out of proportion. You can't just kick me out of here." I raised an eyebrow. "Actually, I can. This apartment is legally mine. You can stay for now, but only because I'm giving you the courtesy of time to figure out your next move. Let me be clear, I'm not going anywhere." Her words brought relief, but they also made me realize just how much control I had given Tyler over my life. For years, I had ignored his dismissiveness and arrogance, telling myself it wasn't worth the fight. But now I could see how much I had lost, and I was determined to take it all back. One evening, Laura, my best friend, came over to help me reorganize the apartment. We boxed up Tyler's things, stacking them neatly in the corner of the living room. "How's he taking all this?" she asked, holding up one of his ties with a smirk. "Not well," I said, laughing despite myself. "He still thinks he can talk his way out of it, but I'm not budging." "Good," she said, tossing the tie into the box. "He doesn't deserve a single inch of your space, or your time." I nodded, grateful for her support. For so long, I had felt alone in my marriage, carrying the emotional and financial burden while Tyler took credit for everything. But now, I had people in my corner, and it made all the difference. The final piece of my plan fell into place the day Tyler brought Nicole to the apartment. I was sitting at the dining table, reviewing paperwork, when they walked in as if they owned the place. Nicole looked around with a smug smile, her arm looped through Tyler's. "So, this is where we're staying," she said, her voice dripping with entitlement. I stood up, my heart pounding but my resolve unshaken. "No," I said firmly. "This is where Tyler was staying. You, Nicole, won't be staying here at all." Her smile faltered, and she glanced at Tyler, who looked equally stunned. "What is this?" he demanded. "This," I said, gesturing around the apartment, "is my home. Not yours, not hers, and certainly not some hotel for you two to shack up in after stabbing me in the back." Nicole's expression turned icy, but she said nothing. Tyler, on the other hand, looked like he was about to explode. "You can't do this," he shouted. "You're being unreasonable." I met Tyler's gaze without flinching. "No, Tyler. What's unreasonable is thinking you could sell my home, pocket the money, and expect me to just roll over. You're lucky I haven't filed criminal charges yet." Tyler stood in the doorway, his face red with frustration. Nicole crossed her arms, looking increasingly uncomfortable. "You're being ridiculous, Amelia," Tyler said, his voice tinged with desperation. "You can't just kick me out of my own home." I stepped forward, my voice calm but firm. "This is my home, Tyler. The deed has been in my name for months, and you know it. You signed the paperwork without even reading it, like you always do. So no, this isn't your home anymore." Nicole turned to Tyler, her perfectly manicured hand tightening on her purse strap. "Wait, what is she talking about?" she asked, her tone sharp. "You said this was your apartment. That you sold it." Tyler flinched, trying to wave her off. It's complicated. I'll handle it. Oh, it's not complicated, I said, stepping closer. You tried to sell an apartment that doesn't belong to you. The sale is void, Tyler, and as of now, you don't have a leg to stand on. Nicole's composure began to crack. You mean the money you told me you had? She stopped mid-sentence, her voice rising. Oh my God. Did you lie about that too? Nicole, let me explain, Tyler said quickly, holding his hands up. But she wasn't having it. No, I said, cutting him off. Let me explain. Tyler tried to sell the apartment behind my back, thinking he could take the money and leave me with nothing. What he didn't know is that I had the deed transferred to my name months ago. Not only did he fail, but he also committed fraud by pretending he had the right to sell it. Nicole's mouth opened and closed, her face pale. Fraud, she whispered, taking a step away from him. Are you serious? Yes. Fraud, I said, crossing my arms. And I'm fully prepared to press charges if he doesn't get his things and leave by the end of the day. Tyler's smug facade finally cracked. You can't do this, Amelia, he said, his voice turning to a desperate plea. We've been together for 6 years. You can't just throw me out. I stared at him, my voice cold and unwavering. You threw me out the moment you made that phone call, Tyler. You told me you were divorcing me and laughed about me having to find a new place to live. You didn't just betray me, you tried to ruin me. So don't stand there and act like you're the victim. Nicole took another step back, her eyes darting between us. This is insane, she muttered, clutching her purse tighter. You didn't tell me any of this, Tyler. You said you had everything handled. Tyler turned to Nicole, desperation clear on his face. Nicole, I can fix this. I just need. She raised her hand, cutting him off. Don't. Just don't. I'm not getting dragged into your mess. Without another word, Nicole turned and stormed out, leaving Tyler standing there in stunned silence. I couldn't help but smile as the door clicked shut behind her. Looks like you're on your own now, I said, turning to Tyler. Let's talk about what happens next. He slumped onto the couch, burying his face in his hands. Amelia, please. I screwed up. I know that. But you don't have to do this. You're right, I replied, grabbing a folder from the kitchen counter and placing it on the coffee table in front of him. I don't have to do this. But I'm going to. This is the divorce paperwork. My lawyer has already drafted it, and I suggest you sign it quickly. The sooner you do, the sooner we can both move on. He stared at the folder, his face pale. You really hate me that much? Hate you? I let out a bitter laugh. No, Tyler, I don't hate you. I feel sorry for you. You had everything, someone who loved you, a home we built together, and you threw it all away because you couldn't see past your own ego. I stood, my heart pounding but my resolve firm. I want you out of here by the end of the day. Take your things, and figure out where you're going to stay. This is the last time I'm giving you any grace. He opened his mouth to argue, but stopped, his shoulders slumping in defeat. Fine, he muttered. I'll go. Good, I said, walking toward the door. And don't even think about trying anything else. Chloe's handling everything, and if you cross another line, I won't hesitate to let the courts deal with it. I opened the door, and Tyler slowly stood, grabbing his coat. He didn't look at me as he walked out, his footsteps heavy with defeat. For a moment, I felt a pang of sadness, not for him, but for the life we could have had if he'd been the man I thought he was. But the feeling passed, replaced by relief. I closed the door behind him and locked it with the new key I'd made. This was my home now, and no one, not Tyler or anyone else, would take it away from me again. The silence in the apartment was overwhelming, but for the first time in years, it didn't feel heavy. The space was mine, free from his entitlement and lies. It was just me, the home I'd fought to keep, and the quiet realization that I had won, not just against him, but against every doubt I'd ever had about standing up for myself. I stood in the middle of the living room, taking in the emptiness where Tyler's things had been, his oversized gaming chair, the framed jerseys that cluttered the walls, and the gaudy coffee table he'd insisted on keeping, all gone. The apartment looked cleaner, brighter, like it was mine again. That evening, Lauren came by with takeout and a bottle of wine. She plopped onto the couch with a dramatic sigh. Is he really gone? She asked. Gone and not coming back, I said, pouring 2 glasses of wine. I gave him until the end of the day to pack his things. He didn't argue. Lauren raised her glass. To fresh starts and well-deserved victories. I clinked my glass against hers, feeling the weight of the past week slowly lift. To never letting someone walk all over me again. Over the next few days, I reclaimed the apartment piece by piece. I rearranged the furniture, moved my favorite artwork into the living room, and filled the space with things that made me happy. It wasn't just redecorating, it was rediscovering who I was, separate from Tyler and the shadow he'd cast over my life. Chloe called with updates on the legal proceedings, her voice brimming with confidence. The fraud charges are off the table since the buyer decided not to pursue them, she explained, but the divorce paperwork is moving along smoothly. Once Tyler signs, you'll be officially free. Hearing the word free made my chest tighten. It wasn't just about the divorce, it was everything I'd been carrying for years. The resentment, the self-doubt, the feeling of being trapped in a marriage that didn't value me, all of it was finally being lifted. Tyler tried to reach out a few times. His messages swung between half-hearted apologies and desperate attempts to guilt me into reconciling. I made a mistake. One read, "Can't we at least talk about this?" Another was more desperate, "You're going to ruin me, Amelia, is that what you want?" I didn't reply. For the first time, I wasn't wasting my energy trying to fix something broken beyond repair. Tyler had made his choices, and now he was dealing with the consequences. By the end of the week, the apartment felt like a completely new space, warm, inviting, entirely mine. Sitting on the couch with a cup of tea, the city lights twinkling through the window, I reflected on everything that had happened. Tyler's betrayal had been a shock, but it was also a wake-up call. For too long, I had believed I didn't deserve better, that I had to settle for the scraps of respect and love he occasionally tossed my way. But now, I knew better. I wasn't just reclaiming my apartment, I was reclaiming my life. A month later, everything looked different. The apartment wasn't transformed by drastic renovations, but by how it felt. It reflected me, my tastes, my personality, my independence. The absence of Tyler's clutter and overbearing presence made the space feel lighter, freer. The divorce had moved along smoothly. Thanks to Chloe's precision, Tyler signed the papers without much fuss, realizing he had no leverage. There was no dramatic showdown, no emotional plea to work things out, just a clean break. It felt bittersweet and deeply satisfying all at once. Looking around my home, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't known in years. The weight of the past had finally lifted, and the future felt wide open. One day, as I sorted through some old papers, I came across a photo of Tyler and me from our early years together. We were smiling, arms around each other, full of hope and promise. I stared at it for a long moment, letting the memories wash over me. There had been good times, moments when I truly believed we were building a life together. But those moments were gone, overshadowed by years of neglect, manipulation, and betrayal. I tucked the photo into an envelope and slid it into a drawer. It wasn't something I wanted to keep out in the open, but I wasn't ready to throw it away, either. It was a part of my past, but it didn't define me anymore. Lauren and I celebrated the finalized divorce with dinner and drinks at a trendy rooftop bar downtown. The city lights shimmered around us as we toasted to new beginnings. "You're glowing," she said, raising her cocktail. "Single life suits you." I laughed, feeling a warmth I hadn't experienced in years. "It's not the single life," I said, "it's the freedom. For the first time, I don't feel like I'm living under someone else's rules." We toasted again, and as the night went on, a growing sense of pride welled up inside me. I'd faced one of the hardest moments of my life and come out stronger. I wasn't just surviving, I was thriving. Back at home, I started planning for the future. The apartment, once a symbol of Tyler's overbearing presence, had become more than a refuge. It was a testament to everything I'd reclaimed, but I knew I wouldn't stay there forever. Someday, I'd move to a new place, one without any lingering shadows of my life with him. Until then, I was determined to make the most of every moment in this space I'd fought so hard to keep. That night, as I curled up on the couch with a cup of tea, a deep sense of peace washed over me. I thought about how Tyler had laughed during that phone call, so certain he'd won. And now, I couldn't help but smile. His arrogance had been his downfall, my quiet strength had been my salvation. This wasn't just the end of a marriage, it was the beginning of a new chapter, one where I called the shots, one where I chose happiness on my own terms. For the first time in years, I felt truly free.